Hi, and welcome to Living in Central Texas. I'm Aundrea Dudik, Realtor with Vista Real Estate, and I'm here with my right-hand guy and expert in lending, Jacob Studdard with Edge Home Financing.
Fantastic. It's a pleasure being here, Aundrea. I appreciate it. I look forward to helping out some future home buyers and getting their questions answered.
Awesome. So you're curious about the first steps in buying a home? Well, stay tuned. We're going to cover it all. So before we get started, I think it'd be good to maybe discuss how Jacob and I met, because relationships are everything in real estate. There are a lot of parties involved when buying or selling a home, and I don't even know that people realize how many people are involved. Mm-hmm. But the relationships that you have can really help guide a successful transaction and make the difference between a really positive home buying experience and a not so great one.
Absolutely. There's so many different players that are involved in just a standard transaction. It's great to have a little bit of transparency and insight on what it actually takes from a behind the scenes perspective. That way you understand there's a lot of moving parts and how important communication is between all parties to ensure a smooth home buyer process.
So if you think about it, when you're purchasing a home, there's going to be buyer's agent, seller's agent, lenders. We've got title companies, all the people involved with title.
You got appraisal, survey.
Yes, appraisers, surveyors,
homeowners insurance,
home inspectors.
Yep.
The actual buyers and the actual sellers.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. So you put all those together, it makes sense for everyone to kind of be on the same page, which is the importance of communication between each party, because there's so many moving parts. If one person's on a different page, or is late, or isn't tracking something that others should be, then that's when mistakes happen or the ball gets dropped.
Yep, and so that's how Jacob and I actually started working together. So I've been in real estate for, I think, about 7 years now. And you've been in this how long now, Jacob?
3 years.
3 years.
Yep.
So one day I was just driving and Jacob kind of cold called me and introduced himself. Good old cold call, which normally doesn't work. And I mean, I get a lot of phone calls, but it was the way he carried himself in the conversation. It was very low pressure, it was kind, and I could immediately pick up on the fact that you were a good communicator. And so he asked me to coffee to kind of discuss the products and services that he offered, and we met and we just really hit it off.
Reaching out to Aundrea was definitely a big move. She's a great producer, fantastic agent. You can tell by just her communication and her post on her social media that it was somebody who I wanted to work with. And so from that, I knew that building a relationship with an agent who actually embodies selfless service is going to be something that will help all of us, serve home buyers out there and make sure that they're entrusted in good hands. So.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. So we met up for coffee and he was talking about the different services he offered. And well, first we connected because we both have 2 young daughters. And so, that's helpful in a lot of different ways. We both experienced a lot of similar but different things.
Exactly.
But I think there are a lot of misconceptions with mortgage brokers, and one of my biggest things as a realtor is a fear of not having a local lender. So a good agent's going to tell you, hey, we recommend that you work with a local lender, and well, there's a lot of different reasons.
For sure.
Local lender they know our market, they know the people that work here, the other people that they'll be communicating with.
Exactly.
They know our property taxes, which is a big one. Anyway, they just know things better. And so I get leery with mortgage brokers sometimes because they're not always local. And I just haven't had great experiences. But when Jacob was really talking about the different services he offered, it was a different experience overall, because I could actually have that face-to-face conversation with him, and very quickly I realized that the communication was not going to be an issue.
For sure. Yeah, so that is a big thing. There's a difference out there between all the different types of lenders. All right, so there's your mortgage brokers, your retail lenders, and just your standard banks. So each entity has their own pros and cons to working with them. They all have their own mishaps.
So I guess, Jacob, what were some of the things that you felt like in that moment, or what are some things that you feel that as a mortgage broker you can offer that maybe a typical lender couldn't?
The advantage of working with the mortgage brokers, we have here at Edge Home Finance, others are different, but in general the sense is the same, that we have here over 140 different wholesale lenders that we're partnered with, which means a different set of options, a different set of overlays, and each lender has their own their expert fields of the different type of loans that they work on. So we have a lot more options when it comes to fitting our buyers into a certain area, to ensure that they're served in the best way possible, rather than having one stop shop of, if you can't get it through here, then you're done and you have to move on and find somewhere else. Versus us, you have the ability to shop around. We can do the shopping for you, which makes not only just the experience much more seamless, it also ensures that agents have a lot more opportunity in us as well for closings to offer the ability to buy more homes and get more people in the house.
Yeah, so basically one of the biggest things was every buyer is unique and every buyer's situation is unique. And so yes, there are different everyone has different situations. Are they self-employed? How long have they been employed? What's their credit like? What's their debt to income like? What's their overall employment status? Well, the thing with Jacob is that he can, instead of just having one set of parameters to work in, is what he's saying, I can call him and he can reach out to 10 different people and say, based off of their situation, this one will work best. And so you might just get a no from another lender because they don't have that flexibility. But he's able to kind of shop around and help figure that out. Okay, that's really cool.
Great way to put it. Yeah, so flexibility is the number one bonus that comes with working with the mortgage broker. And you said it perfectly. Each buyer is so unique in just their situation. And there's what's called overlays, right? So overlays, just to give you kind of a background of what that means, there's the existing loan guidelines that all lenders, regardless of status, they have to abide by. Now, that's the raw loan guidelines for conventional, Fannie Mae, Freddie Macs, your FHA, VA, USDA loans. Now, what overlays are is an additional set of rules that the lenders themselves actually set to kind of narrow and filter in the type of loans that they want. Now that can mean a max debt to income ratio, that can mean a minimum credit score, that can mean loads of different things, down payment, etc.
So overall, there's every loan type has their own set of guidelines that are immovable or required based off, regardless of the lender. But then the lender can also have their set of requirements, which are different for each lender. And yours are more flexible.
And having that amount of lenders that we're partnered with, and it being on the wholesale side, the amount of overlays are a lot less prevalent, and it allows for more buyers to purchase homes, and it allows for a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, so I've come to Jacob, in full transparency, I think we've been working together about a year now, and the reason he's my go-to is, the number one reason is the communication, because if I don't hear from him immediately, I know I will. I'll get a message or something I can't get to right now, I'll get back to you shortly. And no one's ever in the dark. At any point, everyone knows what's going on, and in my opinion, everything is really figure-outable, and we can figure anything out, and especially when you have a dozen people involved in the process. A lot of those are out of our control, and I think that we get that, but in order to figure it out, we have to work together as a team, and that communication is there. So there have been quite a few circumstances already where other buyers of mine have been rejected or denied by other lenders based off of certain circumstances, and I've been able to call Jacob and say, hey, this is their situation. And not only, the good news is we were kind of talking about this before the video started, they're different. Not everyone's in it for the same reason, and of course we're here to support our families too, and we have to make an income as well, but I think you can tell when you work with us that we genuinely do care about making a good experience for the person that we're working with and doing a really good job. And Jacob is very good at, even if it's not a right now thing, like doing a what do you call it, credit repair?
Yeah,
or
basically kind of like building a game plan. So not every buyer is ready right away, right? So that's another thing, is just because you're not ready now doesn't mean you won't be ready in the future. And so it's important to get with somebody who will invest in you as an individual or as a family, so that you can actually build some sort of game plan that allows you to kind of backwards plan from a point of what you want to buy and understand what it's going to take to get there. That way, at least when you get closer to that end goal of home owning, you're in a much better position than you were in the beginning if you were to just kind of jump in, not really knowing where you're at. And maybe you need a little work, and that's kind of the thing too, is if you're willing to invest in not just yourself but also your business and others, it's one of those things where it comes down to a personality difference. Is we actually want to selflessly serve our clients rather than just pushing people through volume-wise just to cash a check. It's not like that.
Agreed. And another thing is too is when you work closely with someone, when it's a good team effort, you're able to catch things and communicate well one another. Good example is recently had someone that was referred to me, and she was really emotionally ready to buy, but when I started talking to her about her down payment and her closing costs, which we'll go over that in just a second here.
Sure.
She was new, she didn't understand the full process and what could be covered by someone else, what had to be covered by her, what those costs look like, and she really didn't have any cash to do it. And when we started having that conversation, I could tell she was discouraged and started thinking, and I said, well, do you have any retirement accounts? And she said, yes. I said, do you have a 401k or anything like that? And she said, yes. And of course, like, I know my lane. Like, there's only so many qualifying questions I could ask, but that gives me a good place to say, like, hey, now that we know what you're looking for and what you are hoping to do, we need to get you over to someone that's going to really be able to look at your full situation, get you pre-qualified, dig into your file, look at all those little pieces and see what amount you qualify for and what your options even are. And so I gave her Jacob's information along with a couple others and said, called Jacob, and I said, this is who will probably be calling you. This is her situation. Here's what I'm thinking. So we're already tracking on the same page. And the client kind of isn't having to go through, I mean, of course she can, but she doesn't have to go through in detail or forget if she missed anything. We've had that conversation, and I think that that's comforting for them too, is to know that there's already people working for them.
Exactly, yeah, and to your credit, it's, as a lender and a loan officer on my side of things, it's great when an agent actually does some of the pre-screening for you, because not only does it help the client understand that the agent is going to be asking some of this ourselves as the lender is going to ask, just as typical pre-screening, as in like income, assets, all those fun things. So you do a great job on that, and I do appreciate it. It's kind of the standard that most agents should start to kind of adopt is a good amount of pre-screening questions. So, but
when that communication is there, I mean, we're able to kind of fill in the gaps for each other, or like catch things that maybe the other person didn't. And anyway, so that's
yeah. So, and to her point, with all those questions, and I'm going to reiterate some of those same questions. So I have the same understanding as she has from the lender's point of view. So after having that conversation with the buyer and getting all those details in place, what I'm able to do is then backwards plan from her end date of when she wants to buy a house. So I know what steps we need to take to get there.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, or at the end of that conversation, she was super happy. She never thought she'd be able to buy a house. And after listening to her and understanding where she's at, now she's actioning her game plan all the way through. She's very happy.
Yeah, so. It makes the difference. Like to really just give people the time and have those conversations could go a long way.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll get into what are some frequently asked questions, and what are some frequently asked questions in purchasing a home. Question number one: how much money do I need to purchase a home?
All right. Yeah. So for down payment, it's going to be the number one. So down payment is essentially the money you're putting towards the principal on the day of closing. In most cases, if you're looking to buy a $400,000 home, you can put anywhere from 3 to 5% down, depending on the loan type. Sometimes zero in that case. But down payment is going to be the first item that we're looking at.
And down payment's a non-negotiable.
Yep.
It's basically skin in the game for the lender. It shows the lender that you're a serious buyer, because if you default on the loan or you back out, they're going to have to kind of recoup that, right?
Exactly, yeah. So the down payment does show skin in the game. On a $400,000 loan, you're looking at $12,000 to $20,000 down. Now, depending on the loan program, you can adjust that to each scenario is unique, obviously. But in general, that's what you're going to be looking to bring to the table on a home price of that range.
Unless you are a VA buyer.
Right, unless you're a VA buyer, then you have the option to do a 0% down so long you have the entitlement to do so, which is fantastic.
So in every home purchasing situation, you're going to have down payment and closing costs. Down payment is non-negotiable. No one can pay for that other than the buyer. But again, VA loan,
they have the option on VA loan to bring money to the table in regards to down payment if they want.
Okay. Yep. And then closing costs. So closing costs, that's a little bit different.
Yeah, so closing costs are a lot different. And there's basically what closing costs are. It's the cost of all the third parties that we mentioned earlier that are involved in the home buying process. So there's a handful of them. So not to mention all of them, but just some general ones is your title fees, your prepaid interest, which is remaining days in that month that you owe interest for which you close. You have your prepaid homeowner's insurance, which is basically the first full year of your homeowner's insurance premium that's due on closing. You have your property taxes, you have escrows, appraisal fees. Those are pretty much the bulk of it. There's other fees in there, but in general, those are the fees you'll have for closing costs.
And so closing costs, process-wise, how this will go is you get pre-qualified. You speak with you can speak with. I think you have two different ways that you can go. You can either speak with an agent first, so that we can decide. We can do another video on this at a later time. But are you purchasing a new home versus a resale home? What are your goals? Because sometimes your goals will determine financing. Are you looking to do a new construction home where you're doing a custom home where you're carrying the note that's going to look a little bit different? So you can speak with a realtor first, or you can speak with the lender first. I don't really think there's a right or a wrong way in going about
there's
that.
Not. Yeah.
No. And then once you speak with your lender, if you speak with Jacob, he'll help you fill out an application, get pre-qualified, and then we'll know how much money, once you're pre-approved, how much a house you can afford. And at that point, we can start the fun part of buying a home.
Exactly.
But what happens is once we know that amount, we have our conversation, we can start our home search, and then if you find a home that you're really interested in, I think a good realtor is going to get in contact with the lender and say, because we want to make sure we're using our negotiation power to its full advantage. And so one of the best ways to do that, for example, is I'll call Jacob to say, hi, I'm working with Jane Doe, and she is interested in purchasing 1234 Main Street. This is the offer price. She's looking to close in 30 days. Can you give us estimated closing costs, down payment, and monthly payments?
Really, as you get through the process and you get closer to that pre-approval or at that pre-approval, one of the good things is we're able to, especially with Aundrea, because she'll communicate and let me know like they're going to go view a home, and if the buyer's super interested in that home, I'll ask for the address, and what we're able to do is we're able to tailor that application to that address, so we can get a pretty good ballpark estimate of what the estimated closing costs will be, along with monthly payment and all that good stuff.
And this is another lender, because I can't tell you the amount of times that, of course, people want to look at homes on weekends,
right.
And now we're on a Saturday or Sunday, and I can't get a hold of a lender to answer some of these questions. Another big reason to work with a local lender. But yes.
I appreciate that.
Yes. So Jacob gives closing costs, right? So then at that point, I'm able to have a conversation with you as the buyer and say, all right, let's submit our offer. How much? Because we can ask for the seller to pay towards your closing costs. Well, at this current moment, we are in a fabulous buyer's market.
For sure.
And so, we've seen some of the most killer deals for our buyers right now.
Absolutely. Testament to you.
Yeah, for both of us. But at that point, if houses have been sitting for 6 months, if Jacob tells me, yeah, their closing costs are $8,000, but if you can get X amount in additional credits from the seller, in concessions from the seller, then we can buy down the rate a little bit. So everyone's freaking out about a 7% interest rate, but in this market, we can, what if we can get all your closing costs paid for, and we can get the seller to pay down your rate, and so at the end of the day, you're getting the home that you love, you're not coming very much out of pocket, maybe just your down payment, and you get a lower interest rate. I mean, again, of course, every situation is different, but we are able to do that a lot right now.
Exactly, yeah, so that's one of the big bonuses in the market right now. Is it's definitely a buyer's market. There's a lot of room for negotiation, and if you pair with the great agent, you'll find that from my side, nearly all of the contracts that I've gotten, especially with Aundrea, have some sort of closing cost involved. Seller credit involved. So the seller is basically conceding an X amount of dollars to cover the buyer's closing cost and their discount points to purchase down their rate. So rather than having to come out of your own pocket to pay for a rate buy down, for example, and you can negotiate to have the seller cover that for you.
Yes.
Obviously, each scenario is different and each buyer is unique, but at the end of the day, to offset the increase in rates just in the overall market, that's a very, very creative tool to use that only the market right now is offering, is the seller credits to buy that down for you.
Yes. So to circle back and to summarize on that, so how much money? Every loan type is different. The loan types that we're typically going to look at: VA, FHA, conventional.
USDA would be on there. If you're a USDA buyer, you're pretty unique in itself. So
yeah. So each of those is a little bit different in the amounts that you have to put down in terms of your down payment. But I think Jacob gave a pretty good range of that. And then closing costs. Your closing costs can vary based off of time of year. But what would you say right now, range of closing costs?
Yeah, so typically 2 to 3% of the sales price in just closing costs, not including down payment, is a really good ballpark estimate. Obviously, for budget, try to plan for the latter end of that, just so you can be prepared depending on property taxes, homeowners insurance. Those are so adjustable right now, especially with the increase in homeowners insurance. It's good to kind of offset that expectation.
But if you have any concerns about that, give Jacob a call so that he can look at your particular situation and find what's best for you, because sometimes it's not always best. I mean,
right.
So we had a buyer not too long ago where she did have some money saved in savings, but she was excited about a down payment assistance program. But it was going to end up costing her a lot more money each month by using that than if she were to use her savings. But Jacob was able to go through all of that in great detail to explore what situation was best for her. So again, There's lots of options. So you can explore that with him. That's our first question. Question number 2, what is the first step in buying a home? We kind of went over this one a little bit earlier, but first step would be to just pick up the phone and make a call. Reach out to either Jacob, myself, and have that conversation, and we'll help guide you. Our job is to make it as easy and honestly enjoyable as possible. Buying a home should truthfully not be stressful. It should be exciting, and we're here to kind of carry that burden and make things easier for you. So call us and we will be able to guide you on your next steps, get you into filling out an application, finding out how much home you can afford, and then start looking at homes, and then everything else will hold your hand through the rest. We'll hold your hand.
Absolutely.
I'll hold your hand through home inspections, negotiations of repairs, getting everything, all the little goodies in your contract, and then making sure we'll both ensure that everything from once you're under contract to closing is extra.
Absolutely. So I would definitely say if you're looking to purchase, it's easy to get kind of that shiny object syndrome and want to look at all types of homes at all different purchase prices and listing amounts. It's very easy to get caught in that rabbit hole. So I would definitely recommend to try to get pre-approved or at least pre-qualified in general before you really start shopping around. That way you can set a realistic shopping window for yourself and for your agents.
Well, we don't want to have you heartbroken if you find the home of your dreams, but it turns out you're pre-qualified. Yes, you can't afford it, and you can afford $20,000 or $50,000 less, well, now your eyes are kind of set on a home that's worth a lot more. And alternatively, maybe you can afford a lot more that you didn't even realize.
Exactly.
And now you've limited yourself because you didn't have that call up front.
Yeah.
So, and maybe even missed the home that you really wanted.
There's plenty of examples of both of those, right? There's plenty of examples of buyers getting overzealous and wanting to look in a range that they realistically cannot afford, versus the opposite, where they thought they were kind of limiting themselves as to what they thought they could afford, but when it came down to it, they were actually able to afford much more than they could have ever imagined. So it's definitely important to get your stuff pre-approved, which would be the best thing, to set that expectation for all parties, so we don't have any broken hearts.
No broken hearts.
Exactly.
It's the worst. No broken
it's
hearts.
It's the worst. Not a good conversation.
No. Question number 3, what credit do I need in order to purchase a home?
Yeah, so there's a lot of misconceptions out there with credit scores, right? So going back to overlays, each lender can technically set their own minimum credit score requirements for each loan type. In general, it's going to depend on which loan type fits your scenario. Okay, so that's number 1. For specific credit scores, it depends on loan type, right? So in general, conventional loans, you're looking at somewhere around a 620. Okay, that's just the minimum requirements. For FHA, you can go down to 580 with the minimum down payment. As you go down further, your down payment may or may not increase, just for qualification requirements. Now, VA loans, there's technically no credit score, but obviously I don't recommend trying to buy if you don't have a decent credit score, likely in the 600s, just to set yourself up in the best position possible.
So Jacob, what happens if someone has no credit?
Yes.
Like if someone says, for example, I had a client who said, I'm doing the Dave Ramsey method. It's not that we have bad credit, we actually have no credit. What happens then?
Yeah, so there is what's called non-traditional credit. So you can actually purchase a home with no credit scores. Now there's different requirements to it, obviously, but technically what you can look at is your previous rental history. If you have made any lease payments, or like if you're leasing an apartment or a house, you can use those to support that you actually make your payments on time. Other things are utilities, electric bills, phone bills. So if you have a combination of those, you can actually have the opportunity to buy a house just with that supporting yourself.
Awesome.
Yeah, pretty neat.
Yep. Question number 4, where Jacob and I currently are, we're in Bell County.
Yep.
And we are very close to Fort Cavazos, formerly Fort Hood. And so we get a lot of veteran buyers. And Jacob himself is a veteran, Army veteran.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me see. Artillery?
Air Defense Artillery.
Was I close?
Yep,
Okay.
you're pretty close. Good memory.
Thank you. And so we serve a lot of veterans here, and a lot of times they're PCSing here, they're coming here, they're not. There's this extra almost element of trust that I think goes into working with them, because they're not here. And so we get a lot of VA questions and a lot of VA misconceptions. Can you use your VA loan more than once?
Yes, so absolutely. You can use it more than once. So you have what's called your certificate of eligibility, which proves your eligibility for the VA loan. In there's what's called your entitlement. So as long as you have remaining entitlement from your first purchase, you can technically purchase a home again using your VA loan and keeping your first purchase open, so long you qualify for both mortgage payments. It's not very common, but it's a thing that people don't know about.
No, and so I had a really young couple reach out to me a few months ago, and they said they were interested in buying a home, and they were wanting to go. They were looking into an FHA loan, first time home buyer loan, and I said, but wait, didn't you say that your husband works at Fort Cavazos and is stationed at Fort Cavazos? And she said, well, yes. And I said, so he's not using his VA loan? She said, well, we don't want to use it just yet. We want to save that for our forever home. And I was so glad that I'd been paying attention and that we'd had that conversation. And I said, no, we're going to save you a lot of money right now.
Absolutely.
And you are going to just be so happy about this. And yeah.
Another one of the huge misconceptions is that selling your house or rolling closing costs into the loan are two big things. So one, you can't really roll the closing cost in on a VA loan purchase. On a refinance, that's different. You can do that. And then also on the selling part, once you sell your home, if you purchase it with the VA loan, you can technically free up that entitlement that you previously used to purchase that home using your VA loan.
Yeah.
So it's something that educating and talking through with people who actually do a lot of VA loan transactions will know, just based off the guidelines. So
cool.
Something pretty neat.
Yeah. So if you have any questions about purchasing or using your VA entitlement, Jacob's just a great resource on that. I am pretty limited in my overall knowledge in that because there's a lot of nuances or little pieces. Expert, like total expert on that.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. We do our best. It's something that we care near and dear about, actually serving our veterans to the utmost potential that we're allowed to do. And educating is one of the main things that we're really here for. So.
Yeah, that's Becky. Well, we hope you enjoyed this video on frequently asked questions in the home buying process. There are a lot of things to cover. If you have any questions or want to contact either one of us, contact information is below in the details. And don't forget to watch my most recent video on the difference between general home inspection and a VA inspection, aka VA appraisal. Until next time.
Thanks.